Okay, so basically, there are three layers to your decision-making consciousness. Your thoughts are on the outer crust, your emotions are beneath your thoughts, and at the center of it all, you have your core stories.
Beneath the clothes, we find a man. And beneath the man, we find his nucleus.
Nucleus?
In this video, we're going to talk about the stories that we all tell ourselves and the power that they have over our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, and our very lives, and also how to begin to rewire our brains and rewrite those stories.
You ain't got no backbone.
I know I'm oversimplifying this, but essentially, energy travels from the core outwards. Your core stories dictate your emotions, and your emotions dictate your thoughts, and your thoughts give way to your actions. Of course, you can practice the skills of emotional intelligence and stoicism and learn to separate your emotions and your thoughts from your identity and your actions. Unfortunately, not a lot of people reach great levels of self-actualization, and the ones who do are the ones who have broken down their core stories. Most people walk through the garden of their life with a pair of scissors, trimming the weeds as they see them, rather than pulling them up from the roots. Yes, you can learn breath work and emotional regulation and be intentional with avoiding triggering situations and people. You can learn many powerful coping mechanisms and strategies, but can you truly pull the thorn from your side? The stories that we believe about ourselves are more powerful than we realize. For example, think about a sports team that has lost every one of the past 20 games. Winning becomes increasingly difficult to believe in once you start to believe the story that you are destined to lose. You start to believe that you can't win, and you start to look for all of the reasons to confirm why you can't win. And in doing so, winning becomes impossible. If you believe that you are a team of losers, you will continue to lose. This is why every motivational sports movie is about a team of negative losers and underdogs who come together as a team and begin to believe in themselves, because it's the belief system, the story, that sets the precedent for success. Our emotional state has immense power over our thoughts and actions. For example, the way your brain works when you're driving while stressed out or upset. Your patience is thin and you are bitching and swearing and judging everyone else on the road. And as you entertain these thoughts and feelings, you walk the line of your own tipping point. Now, when someone gives you the one finger salute, you snap. People are literally out here losing their lives for less, which is absolutely crazy to me. I've seen people lose their marbles over the most minor inconveniences, like being ID'd at a gas station because they were trying to buy smokes or because a mistake was made on their coffee order. A short temper always tells me that that person has extremely negative core stories and feels out of control in other areas of their life and is basically a weak, wounded animal backed into a corner and therefore projects even the slightest discomfort to be a threat to their very existence. A short fuse always exposes a weak person who wants to be seen as strong. But remember, the biggest, most powerful explosives have the longest fuses. Big patience is big dick energy, for lack of a healthier term, because if you think about it, that one is a little bit messed up. But it is the topic that we touched on in the last video. We touched all over it.
Hold on, pause.
Anyways, let's get back on track here. Think of it this way. Your thoughts are like files on a computer, and your emotions are like the folders that your thought files are stored in. So if you change the folder of your emotions, this will change the thought files that you are accessing. And this is why positive thinking is kind of bullshit, or at least it doesn't ever seem to solve the problem at its deepest level. You end up just trying to gaslight yourself, trying to fake it until you make it, which makes authenticity elusive. But it is possible to rewire your brain. It's just difficult to change your thinking when what you are feeling is always overriding how you think. Your thoughts are the files and your emotions are the folders. Most people make the mistake of trying to change themselves by going from the outside layers in, from thoughts to emotions to core stories. They think that if they can change their thoughts, their emotions and identity will follow suit. And that can work sometimes, but it usually plateaus very quickly, because what starts to happen is it becomes a war between your thoughts and your core stories, fighting for power over the territory of your emotional state. And what I find is that with some training, your thoughts can do a great job of winning a lot of battles over your emotions, but mainly only over more easily managed surface level situations and discomfort. For example, managing your impatience during traffic or choosing to go to the gym even when you don't feel like it. But when the situation starts to hit a little too close to home and gets a little too deep and touches on some of those deeper wounds and discomforts, your core stories take over. And this is the uphill battle that most of us live our lives fighting, the war between our thoughts and our core stories for supremacy over our emotional state. So maybe the reason you can't seem to stop overthinking or can't seem to just stop being anxious or feeling depressed, no matter how much thinking you try to do, is because it's your core stories that need to be addressed. I think that the deepest and most lasting way to change our brains is to work from the inside out instead of the outside in. When you change your core stories, your emotions change. And when your emotions change, your thoughts change. If you want to eliminate the weeds from the garden of your mind, would it be more effective to go around with that pair of scissors, cutting the stems whenever you see one pop up, or to dig down to the root and pull it out and replace it with a new plant? To make it clear as to what I mean by core stories, they are the stories that form deep inside your consciousness based on your experiences. The stories that you tell yourself and about the world. For example, if you get attacked by a canine when you're a kid, the story that may form in your brain is dogs are dangerous and scary. And this story may be so loud and so deep that crossing paths with even a tiny little lapdog will elicit a fear response. Or if you experienced embarrassment in front of your junior high gym class for not being able to do a push-up, your story may become, I am weak and unathletic and working out is not for me. And because of this core story, you avoid working out, especially in public. I hope that helped this make more sense, because we all have core stories that our subconscious is constantly reading to us, whether we realize it or not. Stories about everything, stories about money, stories about our body, stories about love and marriage, stories about men or women, or mothers and fathers. And these stories dictate how we feel about these things, and how we feel about these things dictates how we think about them. And as a result, we will go through life confirming these biases for better or for worse. As a side note, if you haven't seen the movie Inside Out 2, go watch it. It's fun, family friendly, and it does an excellent job of bringing to life the dynamic relationship between thoughts, emotions, and core stories. For all you parents, I think that this would be a great way to open the conversation up with your kids. Now, the craziest thing about our core stories is that their foundations are being laid before we are even 8 years old. This is a scientific and psychological fact. The majority of your prefrontal cortex development happens in the first 7 years of your life. And this is why the majority of therapy and inner work is hyper focused on digging into your childhood experiences. It's in our earliest years where the plot webs begin to be spun between our neurons, webs that solidify over time, but thanks to neuroplasticity can be rewired. Our thought patterns can either be webs that trap us and hold us hostage, or webs that catch us when we fall. one of the axes that our thoughts exist on is the spectrum between superiority and inferiority. Some of us tell ourselves stories of our own inferiority, of being less than or unimportant or unseen or too young or too short or not talented or not smart, while other people tell themselves stories of their superiority, like I'm chosen, I'm special, I'm smarter than most people, I'm better than most people. For all you guys out there, have you ever looked around a room and thought about who you could beat up in a fight? Well, studies show that the average man overestimates his fighting ability by over 400%. Talk about a story of superiority based on very little reality. That was just another fun fact for you. But bottom line, both superiority and inferiority complexes will hold you back in equal measure and shut you off from growth and learning and healthy relationships. I digress. I only wanted to go a few steps down that little rabbit trail in the hopes that it can open up a few more doors in your mind's eye for you to have deeper conversations with yourself and answer questions that only you can. But bringing it back, where was I? Okay, so if your core stories are titled things like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worth love, or men are cheaters, or women are materialistic, everything in your life will be built upon the foundations of these core stories, and your brain will do everything in its power to continue to confirm the stories that you believe. This is called confirmation bias. You are confirming your core stories. And our favorite stories to confirm will be ones that help us avoid pain and fear. The pain of rejection, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of failure, the fear of success, the pain of heartbreak. It's all about protecting our wounds, whether we overinflate or underinflate in order to do so. It's like if you have a blister on your foot or that thorn in your side, you will alter the way that you move through life to avoid putting pressure on those painful areas. And this is what we do with many of our core stories. We deploy them consciously or subconsciously as the infrastructure to mitigate the pain and fear in our lives. We build up these stories like walls around our wounds and then construct our lives around that. Now, you're probably wondering when I'm going to get to the good stuff and give you the answer key on how to solve this very circular mess. But I'll tell you for free that I don't have your answers. So there it is. Cat's out of the bag. You've been roped into a sales pitch without a product. Feel free to close the video. I can't give you that time back, but maybe we're in the territory of the sunk cost fallacy now, and you may as well stay to see it through. I will share a bit about what has worked in my life, but only after I gripe for a moment about how liberally we use the word trauma today. It seems like everyone needs some sob story these days. Main character syndrome is on the rise, and people seem to be desperate to feel special and so need to create a traumatic backstory to make themselves feel interesting and empowered. I get that pain and hardship are relative and subjective. Being grounded from a video game for a day may feel like trauma and abuse to some kids, while others are just happy not to get beat black and blue. It's just always been a strange thing to me to have stories about courage and forgiveness and overcoming hardship, books written by Holocaust survivors and victims of harrowing life and death experiences, and horrors that I can't even begin to fathom. And yet, in the same world, we have grown adults who lose all sense and sensibility when Instagram crashes for a couple hours, or when their Amazon package didn't arrive on time, or when there was a mistake on their food order. I cannot imagine such emotionally fragile people having very strong core stories or thought patterns. And I guess I just don't have a lot of grace for such people. But maybe there's some more learning for me to be had in that area, as who am I to judge what should and should not be considered pain. I just think that your core story can become your cope story real quick if you're not careful. At the end of the day, it's not about what happens to you, it's about what you do with it. Such is one of the core pillars of philosophy and stoicism. You may not always be in control of what happens to you, but your response is your responsibility. It is your ability to respond, no matter the situation. So lower your expectations and count it all joy. Am I right? It is the core stories that you tell yourself that will increase the space between reacting and responding. And this is the path to power that very few people ever actualize. The ability to respond instead of react. To give you an idea of how this works in action, one of my favorite examples is imagine someone cutting you off while you're driving in traffic. Do you react? Or do you respond? Do you project your impatience and your own habitual angry driving habits? Do you let your frustrated emotional state or overinflated sense of self-importance dictate your thoughts and actions? Do you immediately tell yourself a negative story about that person, like, what an asshole, they're probably drunk, they need to be taught a lesson, I am karma incarnate? Ask yourself, where is that story coming from? Maybe your own experiences with alcoholism. But what if you tell yourself a story that assumes positive intent, like, hey, maybe that person is rushing to the hospital because they just got a call that their parent or child was just in an accident. That was really scary, but no harm, no foul, and I hope that they get there safely. You see, your emotions and thoughts and actions will follow the stories that you choose to tell yourself. This is as true for more surface situational stories as it is for the underlying core character stories. The bandwidth of your ability to respond rather than react will depend on your core stories and what you believe about yourself. This is where faith has been an important part of my rewiring and rewriting the scripts of my stories. What you choose to believe in is your business, but a belief in a higher power and a bigger picture than the 5 inches in front of my nose has helped me tremendously. When it comes to the judgments and rejections and comparisons and wounds that I have faced and received in my life, I can either believe what those things and the people who caused them say about me, or I can believe in what God says about me. Or how about how my experiences tell me that I'm a liar, I'm a cheater, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, but God says I can take off my old self and become new. Love has done nothing but betray me and cause pain, but the Bible says God is love and I am created in his image. So maybe it's not trying to take from the love that I receive from others to fill my cup. It's about the love that I can become within myself so my cup overflows. Now, if I didn't lose you after sharing about faith, as I know that can be a polarizing thing, not all seeds fall on fertile soil, and that's okay. So if you are still here, thank you. And before I close out, I'll share how I'm personally currently wrestling with my ego and core stories. But first, I should tell you that I think that meditation is the most powerful tool for learning to regulate emotions and separate the voices and stories inside of our heads. So I'll leave a link in the description to one of the guided meditations that I wrote and recorded for this exact purpose and topic. Don't knock it till you try it. And pro tip, science indicates that meditation works best in the moments that you don't want to do it, when you're in the middle of the internal fight. All right, last but not least, how am I currently taking action to change my core stories in my life? Well, I think it is imperative that you go out into the world and do things that challenge the narratives of your core stories. For example, if you struggle with inferiority, go build some new skills and competencies and get some wins under your belt. If you believe that you are a loser, you will continue to lose. And if you struggle with superiority, stop underachieving and hiding behind your ego from failure, and go out and do things that will challenge you to humble yourself. Learn how to fail. Put yourself in situations where you don't feel like you are the best in the room at everything at any given time. And since I struggle a bit with both, depending on the day or situation, I decided to start learning jiu-jitsu this year and to challenge myself to compete. And I will be the first to tell you that it has been one of the most humbling and rewarding experiences in my life. My ego hated walking into my first competition with my white belt on, and I'm about to go do it again this weekend. So maybe your freedom is on the other side of your fear. Fear is just a negative visualization. That's it. It's just seeing what could happen and assuming that it's going to go wrong. And the funny thing about fear is that 99 times out of 100, your fear doesn't even come true. So get out there and slay your dragons and make sure your whole life isn't just a construction to avoid pain. Wish me luck.